Frank Miller had lived through many wars. He fought in the Mars War of 2087. He saw the Centauri fighters lose their battle. He even got out of the bad prison camps on Titan. Frank was now 90 years old. His body was weak, but his mind was still clear. He kept his old fighting knife in a box at home. He liked to walk the streets of New Portland each morning. He had done this walk for 15 years since he stopped working for the Space Force. Today seemed normal. Frank put on his old soldier hat. The sign of the 5th Space Marines shined in the sun. His walking stick hit the ground with each step as he walked to Joe's diner for his morning food. He did not see the group of young people until they were all around him. There were 6 of them. They wore new city clothes with small lights under their skin. "Look at this old guy," said a tall boy with blue hair. His friends called him Kyle. A girl with metal marks on her skin laughed. "My grandpa says these old fighters just made up stories about the wars. He says it was all fake." Frank tried to keep walking and not listen to them. Then Kyle stepped in front of him. "Hey, old man, are those real medals or just fake ones?" "Please, move out of my way," Frank said in a calm voice. His heart was beating fast. "Make us," another boy said. "What will you do? Tell us boring war stories?" Frank held his walking stick tighter. "I fought so you could be free to be rude like this. Now please let me pass." The young people looked at each other, and something mean showed in their eyes. Kyle moved first, pushing Frank's shoulder. The old man almost fell but stayed standing. "Not so strong now, are you?" Kyle said to make fun of him. The girl with metal marks named Zoe stepped up next. "My turn." What happened next was seen by at least 15 people's cameras. Zoe and 2 others pushed Frank hard all at the same time. The old fighter lost his balance. His walking stick fell to the ground as he fell into the street. He almost got hit by a flying delivery box. The young people laughed as Frank tried to get up. His old joints hurt badly. A small line of blood came from where his head hit the ground. What the young people did not know was that 3 blocks away, at the Space Marines office, Staff Sergeant Dwayne Carter was watching everything on a safety screen, and he was already making calls. An old woman named Ruth stopped to help Frank. "Should I call for help?" she asked with worry on her face. Frank shook his head, feeling pain. No need to make a big deal. The young people were still there, watching from the side of the road. They started to feel less brave when they saw the old man was really hurt. "Let's go," Kyle said quietly. "This isn't fun anymore." But as they turned to leave, they found a big man with wide shoulders blocking their way. He wore normal clothes, but the way he stood and the look in his eyes showed he was from the military. "Going somewhere?" asked Private First Class Greg Simmons. Kyle tried to push past. "Move, man. This is not your problem." PFC Simmons did not move. "Actually, it is my problem." 2 more normal-looking people showed up behind the group, then another across the street. Within minutes, the young people found themselves with people all around them. These people seemed to come from nowhere. Some wore normal clothes with just a small Marine pin. Others wore workout clothes with Marine signs. 3 wore full uniforms, as they were on their way to the base when they got the call. Staff Sergeant Carter arrived last, walking calmly up to Frank and giving him a proper military salute. "Staff Sergeant Dwayne Carter, sir. 5th Space Marines, just like you." Frank returned the salute, his hand shaking a little. "Corporal Frank Miller. Though that was a long time ago, son." Carter turned to face the young people, who now stood close together, suddenly looking much younger and more scared than before. "In case you're wondering," Carter said, his voice clear in the now quiet street. "This is what happens when you mess with one of ours." More Marines kept coming. They did not touch the young people, but they made a circle around them. The young people could not leave. They looked scared now. "What are you going to do to us?" Zoe asked, her voice small. Carter looked at her. "We're not going to hurt you. That's not what we do." Frank got to his feet with help from Ruth. "They're just kids, Sergeant. They made a mistake." "Yes, sir," Carter said. "But they need to learn from it." The Marines stood tall and still. They did not yell. They did not push. They just stood there, showing what real strength looked like. "Listen up," Carter said to the young people. "That man you pushed, He saved 16 people from a burning ship during the big escape from Europa Station. He taught 3 groups of Marines how to fight in space, which saved many lives. He lived through the Battle of Olympus Mons when many did not. The young people looked at Frank with new eyes. They saw not just an old man now, but someone who had done big things. We didn't know, Kyle said, looking down. That's the point, Carter said. You didn't know, but you pushed him anyway. You show respect to people not because you know what they've done, but because it's the right thing to do. Frank looked at the young people. He did not see bad kids. He saw young people who needed guidance. 20 minutes ago you thought I was just an old man with nothing to offer, Frank said. But look around you. See all these people? They came because they know something you don't yet understand. He pointed to his old fighter's hat, now dirty from the fall. This isn't just about respect for me. It's about what this stands for. Every person who wears this has promised to keep you safe, even with their own life if needed. We don't ask for much back. Just a little respect. Zoe had tears in her eyes now. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I just wanted to look cool to my friends. Frank nodded. I understand wanting to fit in, but there are better ways to do that. A crowd had formed to watch. Some people took pictures with their phones. A small girl asked her mother, "Who are those people standing in a circle?" "Those are Marines," the mother said with respect in her voice. "They take care of their own." Frank looked at the young people who now seemed sorry and scared. I think these kids have learned something today, he said to Carter. Maybe we can turn this into something good. Carter thought for a moment, then nodded. How about this? Instead of getting in trouble with the law, you 6 will come to the Marine office every Saturday for the next 3 months. You'll help with work in the community. You'll meet more veterans like Corporal Miller. You'll hear their stories. And maybe, Frank added with a small smile, you'll learn what it means to be part of something bigger than yourselves. The young people looked at each other, then nodded slowly. We'll do it, Kyle said. And I'm sorry we pushed you, sir. Frank looked at the circle of Marines around them, then back at the young people. Sometimes the worst things we do lead to the best chances to grow, he said. Now, who wants to join me for breakfast? I'm still hungry and Joe makes the best eggs in New Portland. To everyone's surprise, all 6 young people raised their hands. The next Saturday came fast. Kyle, Zoe, and the 4 other young people stood outside the Marine office. They did not want to go in. Maybe they will make us do push-ups all day, said Pete, the smallest boy in the group. Or clean toilets with toothbrushes, said Mia, a girl with long black hair. Kyle took a deep breath. We have to do this, we agreed. They walked in together. The office was clean and bright. Pictures of Marines in spacesuits hung on the walls. A big flag with the Marine sign stood in one corner. Staff Sergeant Carter sat at a desk. He looked up and nodded at them. Right on time. Good. Behind him stood Frank Miller. The old veteran wore a clean blue shirt with his medals on it. He smiled at the young people. Glad you all came, Frank said. Did we have a choice? Asked Jason, a tall boy with red hair. Yes, Carter said. You could have run away, but you didn't. That shows character. Carter stood up. Today you will not clean toilets or do push-ups. Today you will listen and learn. He led them to a back room. Inside sat 5 old men and women. All wore hats or pins that showed they were veterans. These people fought in the same wars as Frank, Carter said. They will tell you their stories. The young people sat down. They looked bored at first, but then an old woman named Grace began to talk. I was 19 when the aliens attacked Europa Station, she said. I was just a cook, but when the air started to leak out and fires started, I had to fight. She showed them a long burn mark on her arm. I got this pulling 3 children from a burning room. The youngest was just 2 years old. The room was quiet. Zoe leaned forward. What happened to the children? Grace smiled. The boy I saved last is now the governor of Mars Colony. The others grew up to be a doctor and a teacher. Next, a man with no legs spoke. His name was Sam. Lost these fighting the Centauri ships, he said, pointing to where his legs should be. But I saved my whole crew by closing a door that was Damaged. The door cut off my legs, but it saved 20 people. One by one, the veterans told their stories. Not big hero stories from movies, but real stories of hard choices, pain, and helping others. The young people started to ask questions. Real questions, not rude ones. "Were you scared?" Darren asked an old man who had been a pilot. "Every day," the pilot said. "Only fools aren't scared in war. Bravery isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing what needs to be done anyway." Frank watched the young people as they listened. He saw something change in their eyes. They stopped looking at their phones. They stopped looking bored. They started to care. After 3 hours of stories, Carter took them to a small kitchen. "Time for lunch," he said. "You will make food for the veterans." The young people did not complain. They made sandwiches and poured drinks. They served the food to the veterans with care. Frank sat with Kyle, who seemed the most changed by the morning. "I never knew," Kyle said quietly. "My dad says the space wars were just about money and power." Frank nodded. "Some wars are like that. But when you're fighting, it's not about money. It's about the person next to you. It's about doing your job so others can live." "My brother wants to join the Marines," Kyle said. "I always told him it was stupid." "And now?" Kyle looked at Frank. "Now I think I was the stupid one." After lunch, Carter took them outside to a garden behind the building. It was full of plants and flowers. "This is the Peace Garden," Carter said. "It was built by veterans. Today you will work here." For 3 hours, the young people pulled weeds, planted flowers, and fixed broken benches. The work was hard in the hot sun, but none of them complained. Frank worked beside them, moving slower but still helping. Zoe noticed he was getting tired. "Sir, maybe you should rest," she said, pointing to a bench. Frank smiled at her. "In the Marines, we don't stop until the job is done." "But your hands are shaking," Zoe said. Frank looked at his old hands. "So, they are. Maybe you're right." He sat on the bench. Zoe brought him water. Then she went back to work. By the end of the day, the garden looked better. The young people were dirty and tired, but they felt good about what they had done. Carter gathered them together. "Today was just the first day. Next Saturday we go to the Veterans Home to help the oldest veterans. The Saturday after that we clean up the Space War Memorial." "Will Frank come too?" asked Pete. "If he wants to," Carter said. "I wouldn't miss it," Frank said with a smile. As the young people got ready to leave, Frank stopped them. "Today you heard stories about bravery and helping others, but the biggest brave thing isn't running into fires or fighting in space." "What is it then?" asked Mia. "The biggest brave thing is changing who you are," Frank said. "It's looking at yourself and saying, 'I can be better than I was yesterday.' I think all of you did that today." The young people stood taller when he said this. They looked proud for the first time since Frank met them. "Next Saturday, same time?" Carter asked. All 6 nodded. They wanted to come back. As they walked away, Frank watched them go. Carter stood beside him. "Do you think we're getting through to them?" Carter asked. Frank nodded. "You know what I see when I look at those kids?" "What's that?" "I see future Marines," Frank said. "Not all of them, maybe not even most of them, but some of them have what it takes. They just need to find it in themselves." Carter looked surprised. "Even Kyle? He was the one who started the whole thing with you." Frank smiled. "Especially Kyle. The ones with fire inside can become the best Marines of all. They just need to learn to use that fire the right way." As the sun set over New Portland, Frank walked home. His body was tired from working in the garden, but his heart felt lighter than it had in years. Sometimes good things came from bad beginnings. Sometimes a push into the street could lead to a push in the right direction for young lives. The second Saturday came with rain. Heavy drops fell from dark clouds as the 6 young people arrived at the Veterans Home. This big building on the edge of New Portland housed old soldiers who had no family or needed special care. Staff Sergeant Carter waited for them under a cover by the front door. Frank stood next to him, leaning on his walking stick. "Glad you all made it despite the rain," Carter said. "We promised we would come," Kyle said. The others nodded. They went inside. The building smelled clean but old. Long halls with rooms on each side stretched out before them. Old men and women sat in some rooms. Some watched screens. Others just looked out windows at the rain. "Today you will help the nurses," Carter said. "You will bring food, clean rooms, and most important, talk to the veterans." A nurse named Betty gave each young person a job. Zoe and Mia would help serve lunch. Kyle and Jason would clean floors and windows. Pete and Darren would help push wheelchairs and walk with veterans who could still move around. Frank went with Pete and Darren. "I'll show you how to talk to them," he said. "Some have bad memories, some get confused, but all of them were brave once." The first room they went to had an old woman in it. Her white hair was tied back and her hands shook as she tried to drink water. "This is Sarah Jones," Frank said. "She was a pilot in the Mars War." Pete looked unsure. "What do we say to her?" "Say hello and ask if she wants to go for a walk," Frank said. The boys did this. Sarah looked up and smiled. "Young men, are you new Marines?" "No, ma'am," Darren said. "We're just helpers today." "Help me get to the big room," Sarah said. "I want to see people." They helped her into a wheelchair. As they pushed her down the hall, she began to talk about flying ships to Mars. "The red dust gets in everything," she said. "Makes the ships break down. I fixed mine with just wire and tape once." Pete looked at Frank. "Is that true?" Frank nodded. Sarah was famous for fixing ships no one else could fix. In the big room, many old veterans sat in chairs and wheelchairs. Kyle and Jason were cleaning windows. Zoe and Mia were setting tables for lunch. Sarah pointed at a man sitting alone. "That's Bill. He lost his memory in the Titan escape. Go talk to him. He gets lonely." Darren went to Bill while Pete stayed with Sarah. Frank watched as the young people slowly began to talk with the veterans. At first they were shy and unsure, but soon they were listening to stories and even laughing with the old soldiers. At lunchtime, Zoe and Mia served food. They were careful and kind, making sure each veteran had what they needed. "Mr. Miller," Zoe called to Frank. "This man says he knows you." Frank went to a table where an old man with no hair sat. His face was marked with scars. "Joe Brown," Frank said with a big smile. "I thought you died years ago." "Not yet," Joe said with a laugh. "Still waiting for you to pay me those 20 credits you lost betting on the Mars baseball game." Frank sat with Joe. They talked about old times while Zoe listened. She heard about fights in space, lost friends, and jokes played in training. "Were you scared when you were in the prison camps?" Zoe asked Joe. Joe looked at her with serious eyes. "Every day, they hurt us. They didn't give us enough food, but we kept each other alive by telling stories and sharing what little we had." "How did you escape?" Zoe asked. Joe pointed at Frank. "This man, he made a plan. He got 10 of us out. 3 didn't make it, but 7 lived because of him." Zoe looked at Frank with new respect. "You never told us that story." Frank looked down at his hands. "Some stories are hard to tell." After lunch, Carter gathered all the young people and veterans in the big room. "Now for something special," he said. He set up a screen. On it appeared the face of the new Portland mayor. "Veterans of the Space Wars," the mayor said. "I want to thank you for your service, and I want to thank the young helpers who are there today. You are building bridges between the past and the future." The mayor spoke for a few minutes. Then the screen changed. Now it showed a man in a Marine uniform with many medals. "That's General Clark," Frank whispered, "the head of all Space Marines." The general spoke in a deep voice. "I hear there are 6 young people helping our veterans today. I want to thank you personally. You are showing the kind of respect and care that makes our society strong." The 6 young people sat up straighter. A general was talking to them. "Your first meeting with Corporal Miller was not good," the general said. "But you are making up for it now. This shows character. This shows that you can learn and grow. These are the qualities we look for in Marines." After the screen turned off, the young people were quiet. They seemed to be thinking hard. The rest of the day, they worked harder than before. They cleaned better. They talked more with the veterans. They seemed to care more. At the end of the day, as they were leaving, an old veteran named Harold gave each of them a pin. It was small and silver, shaped like a star. "What's this?" Kyle asked. "It's a friendship star," Harold said. "We give these to people who help us. Now you are our friends." The young people put the pins on their shirts. They stood taller when they did this. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was clear now. Carter stood with Frank as the young people walked away. "They're changing," Carter said. Frank nodded. "Faster than I thought they would." "Kyle asked me about joining the Marines when he's old enough," Carter said. "I think he was serious." Frank smiled. "I told you. The fire in him just needed to burn in the right way." As they watched the young people leave, Frank felt proud. Not just of the veterans who had served, but of these young people who were learning to serve in their own way. "Next week is the Space War Memorial," Frank said. "That will be the hardest day for them." "Why?" Carter asked. "Because that's when they'll see the true cost of war," Frank said. "All those names, all those lost lives. It's one thing to hear stories. It's another to see how many never came home." Carter put his hand on Frank's shoulder. "Do you think they're ready for that?" Frank looked at the young people, now small figures, in the distance. "I think they're ready to start understanding, and that's all we can ask." The third Saturday was sunny and warm. The 6 young people met at the big Space War Memorial in the center of New Portland. This place had tall stone walls with names carved on them. Thousands of names. Each name was a person who died in the space wars. Frank and Carter were waiting for them. Frank wore his full uniform today. It was old but clean. All his medals shined in the sun. "Today is different," Carter said. "Today is not about working. Today is about learning and remembering." Frank stepped forward. "Before we start, I want to ask you something. What do you think this place is for?" The young people looked at each other. Kyle spoke first. "It's to remember the people who died in the wars." "Yes," Frank said. "But it's more than that. Follow me." He led them to a wall with many names. He pointed to one name. Ben Miller. "My son," Frank said quietly. "He was 22 when he died, saving his friends from a ship that was breaking apart. The Aus." Young people were quiet. They had not known Frank had a son who died. "I'm sorry," Zoe said. "Thank you," Frank said. "But I didn't tell you this to make you sad. I told you so you understand." Each name here was someone's child, someone's friend, someone's love, real people, not just numbers. Frank took them to a small building at the edge of the memorial. Inside were pictures and things from the wars, spacesuits with holes in them, broken pieces of ships, letters written by soldiers who later died. "Your job today is to clean this building and then listen," Frank said. "Clean with care and respect. These things belong to heroes." The young people worked quietly. They cleaned glass cases, they swept floors, they fixed broken lights. As they worked, Frank and other veterans who had come told stories about the items. "This helmet belonged to Sarah Green," an old veteran named Paul said. "She kept her air inside even though it had 3 holes in it. She made it back to her ship before she ran out of air." "This gun has no bullets in it," another veteran named Mike said. "The soldier who carried it used it as a tool to fix his ship when it broke down. He saved 40 people by thinking fast." After they finished cleaning, Frank took them back outside to the walls with names. He gave each young person a piece of paper and a pencil. "Each of you pick a name," he said. "Any name. Then press the paper over it and rub with the pencil. This makes a copy of the name you can keep." The young people spread out. Each found a name and made a copy. When they came back, Frank asked them why they picked those names. "I picked Maria Lopez," Mia said, "because she was the same age as me when she died." "I picked John Smith," Pete said, "because that's such a simple name for someone who did something so big as dying for others." Frank nodded. "Good. Now I want you to keep those papers. Put them somewhere you'll see them every day. Remember that these were real people who gave everything so you could be free." After lunch, Carter had a surprise. He brought out 6 small, Trees in pots. The memorial needs new trees, he said. You will each plant one. These trees will grow for hundreds of years. People will sit in their shade and remember. Each young person dug a hole and planted their tree. As they worked, Frank noticed something. They were not the same rude kids who had pushed him weeks ago. They worked hard. They were careful. They cared. When the trees were planted, Frank asked them to sit in a circle on the grass. Do you know why I agreed to this plan instead of having you punished by the police? Frank asked. They shook their heads. Because punishment just makes people angry, but giving you a chance to learn, to help others, to be part of something good, that changes people from inside. It changed me, Kyle said. I used to think old people were useless. Now I know better. It changed me too, Zoe said. I never cared about anything before. Now I care about the veterans and their stories. Frank smiled. That's the best thing I could hear. Carter stood up. Now for the last part of today. Each of you will stand guard at the memorial for 1 hour. Stand guard? Jason asked. Like a real Marine? Yes, Carter said. This is a sacred place. Marines guard it day and night. Today you will help. Carter showed them how to stand straight, how to look forward, how to show respect. Then he placed them at different spots around the memorial. For 1 hour, each young person stood guard. They did not talk. They did not move much. They just watched over the names of the dead with care and honor. People who came to the memorial were surprised to see young people standing guard. Some took pictures. Some said thank you. One old woman put flowers by a name while Zoe stood nearby. The woman smiled at Zoe with tears in her eyes. Thank you for keeping watch over my husband, the woman said. Zoe did not know what to say. She just nodded and stood taller. When the hour was done, Frank gathered them together again. How did it feel? He asked. Hard, Pete said. My legs hurt from standing still. Important, Kyle said. Like I was doing something that mattered. Sad, Zoe said. So many names, so many dead people. Frank nodded. All those feelings are right. Being a Marine is hard, it's important, and sometimes it's sad. But it's always worth doing. As the sun began to set, they got ready to leave. Carter reminded them that next Saturday would be their last day of service. What will we do? Darren asked. Something special, Frank said. Something that will test everything you've learned. As they walked away, Frank stayed behind. He went to the wall with his son's name. He touched the letters carved in stone. I think you would like these kids, Ben, he said quietly. They're learning. They're growing, just like you did. Carter came and stood beside him. Are you okay, sir? Frank nodded. Just talking to my boy, telling him about our project with these kids. Do you think it's working? Carter asked. Frank looked at the young people walking away. They walked straighter now. They looked people in the eyes. They helped an old woman cross the street without being asked. Yes, Frank said. It's working better than I ever hoped. The fourth and final Saturday came with clear skies. The 6 young people did not know what to expect for their last day. They met at the Marine office early in the morning. Carter was there, but Frank was not. Where is Mr. Miller? Zoe asked. He will meet us later, Carter said. Today is a big day. Your final test. He gave each of them a small backpack. Inside was water, food, and a map. Today we go to Pine Hill, Carter said. It's a hard walk up the mountain. At the top, Frank is waiting. The young people looked at each other. They seemed worried but ready. Why is he up there? Kyle asked. He will tell you when we get there, Carter said. They drove for 1 hour out of the city. The road went up into the hills. Trees grew thick on both sides. At last they stopped at a small parking area. From here we walk, Carter said. It's 5 miles to the top. The path is not easy. They began to walk. The path went up and up. Rocks made it hard to walk in some places. Trees made dark shadows. Birds sang and small animals ran away as they came near. At first, the young people talked and laughed, but as the path got harder, They grew quiet. Pete, who was the smallest, started to fall behind. "I can't keep up," he said, breathing hard. Kyle, who once would have made fun of him, stopped and waited. "Yes, you can. We'll go together." Zoe and Mia helped each other over big rocks. Jason and Darren found walking sticks for everyone to use. They worked as a team now, not as separate people who only cared about themselves. After 3 hours of hard walking, they saw something through the trees. A small house made of wood sat on the top of the hill. Smoke came from its chimney. "Almost there," Carter said. When they reached the house, Frank came out to meet them. He looked happy to see them. "Well done," he said. "Not many young people could make that walk." "Why are we here?" Kyle asked, still breathing hard from the climb. Frank pointed to a flat rock near the house. "Sit down. I'll tell you." They all sat. From this high place they could see for miles. The city of New Portland looked small in the distance. "This place belongs to all Marines," Frank said. "We built this house. We keep it ready. Do you know why?" The young people shook their heads. "Because from up here we can see everything. We can watch for danger. We can protect the city." Frank sat with them on the rock. "Today is your last day of service. But it's also the day I decide if you have learned what you need to learn." "Learned what?" Jason asked. "What it means to care for others more than yourself," Frank said. "What it means to work hard even when no one is watching. What it means to respect people who came before you." He looked at each of them. "So tell me, what have you learned these past weeks?" They were quiet for a moment, then Zoe spoke. "I learned that old people have stories worth hearing. I learned that wars aren't just in history books, they happen to real people." Kyle nodded. "I learned that being tough isn't about pushing people down. It's about being strong enough to help others up." One by one, they shared what they had learned. Frank listened with a smile. When they finished, he stood up. "Come inside the house," he said. Inside, the house was simple but clean. A fire burned in a small fireplace. On a table sat 6 small boxes. "These are for you," Frank said. "One for each of you." He gave each young person a box. Inside each box was a medal. Not a real military medal, but one made special for them. It had their name and the words, "For service and growth." "These medals don't make you Marines," Frank said, "but they show that you have learned what Marines value: honor, courage, and helping others." The young people put on their medals. They stood tall and proud. "Now for your final task," Carter said. "Frank needs your help." Frank sat down in a chair by the fire. "I come up here every month to check on this place, but I'm old now. The walk is hard for me. I need strong young people to help me check everything and then help me get back down." "The mountain. We can do that," Kyle said right away. For the next 2 hours, they helped Frank check the house. They fixed a broken window. They brought in wood for the fire. They cleaned the small kitchen. They worked without being told what to do. They saw what needed doing and did it. When everything was done, Frank looked outside. The sun was starting to go down. "Time to head back," he said. "The path is harder in the dark." As they got ready to leave, Frank gave each young person a letter. "Read these when you get home," he said. "They're from me to you." The walk down was easier than the walk up. Frank went slowly, and the young people stayed with him. When he needed to rest, they all rested. When the path was rough, they helped him over the hard spots. At the bottom, as the sun set, they reached the cars. Carter shook hands with each young person. "Your service is done," he said. "But remember what you learned." Frank stood before them. He looked tired but happy. "When we first met, it was a bad day. You pushed me down. I fell. But look what grew from that bad moment. 6 young people who now understand what it means to serve others." "Will we see you again?" Zoe asked. "My door is always open," Frank said. "And I still go to Joe's diner every morning for breakfast." As they drove back to the city in the growing dark, the young people were quiet. They had their medals. They had their letters. But most important, they had changed. 3 days later, Frank sat at Joe's diner for his morning breakfast. The door opened and Kyle walked in. Then Zoe. Then the others. All 6 came and sat with Frank. "We thought you might like some company," Kyle said. Frank smiled. "I always do." "And we want to hear more of your stories," Zoe added. As they ate together, people in the diner watched the strange group. An old veteran and 6 young people talking and laughing like old friends. No one watching would ever guess how their friendship started. No one would believe that just 1 month ago, these same young people had pushed this old man into the street. Sometimes the worst beginnings lead to the best endings. Sometimes a circle of Marines around scared teenagers can change 6 lives forever.